Welcome to the Gen AI Daily Briefing for Thursday, August 13th, 2026. The big macro signal today is that consumer AI has crossed another threshold from novelty to infrastructure. Google says Gemini has now passed 1 billion monthly users, roughly alongside ChatGPT reaching the same scale. The interesting part is less the vanity metric than the usage pattern. Google says 63% of Gemini users are interacting by voice, and image generation is running at more than 150 million images a day. That tells you two things. First, multimodal interaction is no longer a roadmap slide. It is the dominant UI for a large share of users. Second, distribution still beats elegance. Gemini's growth is clearly tied to Android, Search, Workspace, and now the broader Pixel stack. For architects, the lesson is straightforward. Model quality still matters, but product surface area and workflow embedment are deciding who gets the query stream. That ties directly into Google's Made by Google event, which was basically a Gemini distribution event disguised as a device launch. New Pixel devices fold Gemini deeper into camera, health, wearables, and device-level interactions. The notable strategic move is not any single feature. It's that Google is using hardware to normalize ambient AI. Voice first, camera first, sensor-rich, always present. If you build enterprise or developer products, expect the same user expectation to migrate inward. People will increasingly assume the model can see the screen, hear the conversation, access the doc, and preserve state across all of it. Next up, on the data governance front, Amazon is taking heat for changing Twitch, so creator content is eligible for generative AI training by default unless users opt out. That includes streams, VODs, clips, chat, and channel text and images. This is important beyond the creator backlash because it shows the next phase of the training data economy. Platforms with proprietary behavioral and conversational exhaust are monetizing it internally. The hard technical reality is that multimodal, socially grounded data is scarce and valuable. The hard product reality is that opt-in rates would be low, and Amazon effectively admitted that. Expect more platforms to test this boundary. Also expect a split architecture response from enterprises. Public model usage where provenance is fuzzy and tightly governed internal model stacks where they can prove training lineage and retention controls. Related to provenance, Anthropic's new invisible watermarking for Claude outputs is creating a surprisingly strong backlash, especially from users who don't want employers or schools detecting AI-assisted work. The technical point here is subtle. This is not just watermarking model-generated text. Reports suggest it can flag text Claude processed, even if the human did substantial editing. That makes it more like an authorship trace than a simple synthetic content marker. From an engineering perspective, provenance is becoming a first-class feature, not just a policy layer. Apple appears to be moving similarly on the image side with code in iOS 27, pointing to camera origin provenance metadata for photos. So the ecosystem is converging on verifiability at the point of generation or capture. The tension is obvious. Authenticity tooling is useful for fraud and deepfake mitigation, but it also creates surveillance pressure around ordinary AI assistants. Worth flagging on the agent side, xAI has launched Grok Bot, an always-on service framed as an AI teammate you can assign work to. The key claim is persistent cloud-based computer use. The bot can sign into apps, run multi-step workflows, and return when the task is done. Conceptually, this is the same broad direction as operator-style systems and enterprise browser agents. But the market signal is that everyone now wants to move from conversational assistance to delegated execution. That shifts the stack requirements. Reliability, permissioning, recovery from partial failure, tool policy compliance, and auditability become more important than benchmark trivia. The open question is whether these systems can maintain acceptable completion rates without exploding inference and orchestration costs. The industry still undersells how expensive, robust, autonomous task execution is once you include retries, tool latency, environment drift, and human escalation. That makes a new benchmark paper especially timely. VAKRA proposes a tool-use benchmark focused on multi-hop reasoning across executable APIs, retrieval sources, and natural language policy constraints, with over 8,000 APIs across 62 domains. This is much closer to enterprise reality than toy agent evals. Most practical failures in agent systems are not raw reasoning failures. They happen when the model must combine structured API interactions with document retrieval and also obey business rules expressed in messy natural language. If VAKRA gets adoption, it could become one of the more useful evals for platform teams deciding whether an agent framework is actually production ready. Another paper that stood out today looks at strong to weak capability transfer at test time instead of training time. The idea is that a stronger model can build an inference time harness around a weaker model, helping it solve tasks more reliably without updating weights. Think of it as scaffolding rather than distillation. That's interesting because it suggests a path to lower-cost serving where a frontier model acts as a compiler of prompts, decomposition plans, or verification structures, and a cheaper model does most of the token generation. If this generalizes beyond narrow benchmarks, it could meaningfully change routing architectures. Instead of always escalating hard queries to a larger model directly, you might use the large model sparingly to construct a task-specific wrapper and then let the small model execute inside it. On the model design side, there's also a provocative paper called the Information Abundance Paradox. The claim is that training with ever longer context can reduce a model's incentive to internalize knowledge parametrically, because the answer is frequently present in context during training. If that holds up, it matters a lot. The current industry assumption is that longer context is unambiguously good. But for system designers, there may be a trade-off between contextual access and durable internal competence. In practice, that could show up as models that are great with the corpus attached, but weaker when retrieval fails, or more brittle under partial context corruption. Long context remains useful, but this is a good reminder that context length is not a free lunch. On the business side, the capital markets continue to reward agent narratives with almost no skepticism. Cognition is reportedly discussing a new round at a roughly $40 billion valuation just months after its last mega raise. Lovable confirmed a $13.3 billion valuation and another $400 million, backed by very fast revenue growth. And River AI, founded by former XAI co-founder Igor Babushkin, raised $1.1 billion barely out of the gate with a pitch around personal agents. There are real businesses here, especially in coding and workflow automation, but the pricing is now assuming not just category leadership, but category permanence. My read is that coding agents probably sustain the valuations better than generalized personal agent plays, because the ROI loop is shorter and instrumentation is cleaner. But overall, this market is pricing in a very small number of eventual winners. One more technical application worth noting. Google DeepMind introduced sign language to text, or SL2T, in user-facing accessibility features. This matters because it's a good example of multimodal AI graduating from demo to product utility in a domain with real inclusion value. Sign language understanding is hard partly because it's not just gesture classification. It involves body pose, hand shape, motion, facial expression, and linguistic structure that doesn't map cleanly to spoken language word order. Shipping this in actual product surfaces suggests the vision language stack is getting robust enough for narrower but important production tasks. What to watch from here? First, whether billion-user AI products translate into durable monetization or just huge inference bills. Second, whether provenance features become standard defaults across text, image, and audio creation. And third, whether agent benchmarks and test time scaffolding start changing how teams actually architect model routing and autonomy. The next few quarters will be less about who has a chatbot and more about who can make delegated action trustworthy and affordable. That's your briefing. We'll see you tomorrow.